There it is. Hi, Glenn.
Hello. Hey, it worked.
It did.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
this is our 24th East conversation, and I'm Jessica DeWitt. I'm one of the editors here at the Network in Canadian History and Environment. And today I am joined by Glenn Iceton. If you want to tell us more about yourself, Glenn?
Sure. That sounds great. Yeah. So, hi, I'm Glenn Iceton. I'm an independent scholar. I'm currently living in Williams Lake, BC, which at the current moment feels like the surface of the sun. It's very hot here, and
Good.
I don't have any air conditioning here. Yes. Oh, you're good thinking. Good thinking. Yeah. So, yeah, that's but we're getting by. Independent scholar here. But I did my PhD at University of Saskatchewan, focusing on Indigenous and environmental history in the Yukon BC borderlands. I'm specifically focusing on the Cascadena and colonial perceptions on Cascadena land use and land rights in the region. So yeah,
Awesome.
thanks so much for having me, Jessica.
Yeah. So I invited you here today because you're part of the Northern Borders Project with Heather Green and Jonathan Ludy. And you wrote the concluding post for the series that we had this spring. And so I thought I'd start off by, you touched upon it in your introduction, but start off by talking more about your connection to this topic of Northern Borders, both personally and
Hmm.
professionally.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for that question. I think that's a wonderful question. And yeah, it's Northern Borderlands. And I've since I can remember, they've always kind of had an impact on my life. I don't think I fully appreciated it as I grew up, but yeah, I grew up in Whitehorse, Yukon, very close to quite close to Alaska. So it was about a 2 hour drive to Skagway, Alaska, and
Mhm.
maybe about a five, depending on how fast you drive, I guess, but about a 5 hour drive to Haines, Alaska. And both of these trips involved kind of crossing not just an international border, the Canada-U.S. border into Alaska, but also crossing into British Columbia. And so kind of on family trips and like whether camping trips or day excursions, that kind of stuff. The border kind of always kind of had a certain degree of kind of influence on my life. So yeah, we did kind of many camping trips to out to Skagway, right? And so there's always kind of accounting for, oh, what can we or what can't we take
Mhm.
across the border. And I'm not so much a fisherman myself, but the rest of my family is really into fishing, and so it's kind of thinking about, okay, what licenses do we need to make sure we have, right? And even kind of going into northern BC, right? It's a very arbitrary boundary. It just follows the 60th parallel, right?
Mhm.
But and it's very easy to like go on a trip to for Atlin, or not even all the way to Atlin, but just somewhere within that borderland, and really having to be kind of cognizant of what side of the border you were on, and like whether you had kind of the right types of licenses for
Mhm.
fishing, or if my dad is a hunter as well, so hunting as well. And yeah, kind of reflecting on the importance of borderlands, it reminds me of an experience I had kind of growing up. I guess this would be during my teenage years. We were camped out at a lake called Morley Lake, which is right on the Yukon BC border. And at the time, for me, it was just kind of this god awful place full of mosquitoes as well, which I remember long nights in the camper trying to kill all the mosquitoes there. And like we were there during the fall kind of hunting season one time, and my dad, being an avid hunter, was sitting on one side of the lake, looking across the lake, and spots a moose kind of in that border cut line, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of right there. Right, we already have a nice border story where we can like the existence of the cut line
Yeah.
allowed him to see this moose. So he hops into a boat and goes across the lake to try to hunt it, right? And of course, there's always the consideration, like which side of the border is the moose gonna run onto, because of course he can only hunt on one side of the border and not on the other side of the border, right? and I don't believe he ended up getting the moose at the end of the day there. But it's just one of those ways in which the border kind of has kind of
Mm-hmm.
impacted my life, I suppose. And I guess just kind of by happenstance, I ended up becoming a historian of borderlands as well. This kind of relates to my dissertation, which, as I mentioned before, focuses on the Cascadena and kind of colonial perceptions of Cascadena land use and land rights. And the Cascadena are, once again, like an indigenous group whose traditional territory is split by the Yukon BC border, and also there's claims into the Northwest Territories as well. And so just out of necessity, this was a borderlands study, and I hadn't initially thought of it as a borderland study, but as I got deeper and deeper into the research, I found like, yeah, this is absolutely a borderland study. There are certain elements of the border that really kind of impacted kind of the ways in which the Cascadena were able to use land both in the Yukon and in British Columbia and in the Northwest Territories. And so this kind of, so yeah, this it just got kind of I kind of became an accidental borderlands historian, I suppose. And from that study, I've kind of developed kind of some other interest in terms of how the border kind of shapes life in the North, in particular. And this goes back to the anecdote with my dad, right? It's like I'm really interested in terms of how and now kind of how borders influence kind of hunting and trapping activities, specifically when you have a kind of one conservation regime kind of on one side of the border and another one that doesn't necessarily correspond on the other side of the on the other side of the border. And so what does that do in terms of like kind of in terms of kind of the cross-border effects of hunting and trapping activities, and kind of cross-border poaching and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I kind of both my personal and professional connection with borders, and I'm very excited to be working on this project with Heather and John, which has been, yeah, they've been absolutely wonderful to work with, and yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like that. I like your accidental border history. I feel like I
Yeah,
kind of am too, because I ended up like looking at the border between like Alberta and Idaho and stuff, and like not what I set
yeah,
out to do.
yeah.
Um, and I love your personal stories. Like
Oh,
I've
thanks.
always loved your passion for the Yukon, and like
Oh, thanks.
when I think of Canadian historians who have like a really like immersive place based research directive. I don't know
Mm.
what the word I'm going. I always think of you. I always think
Oh,
of you and your
thank you.
passion for the
Yeah,
Yukon. So I love that.
yeah. It's been too
Um,
long since I've been up there, though. I do need to make another trip up there soon. So yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Pandemic and whatnot, plus life.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, yes,
Um,
yeah.
so you opened up this conclusion with this question, which I think I also kind of approached to Jonathan Ludi when I was talking to him. And that is the question of why study borderlands in the Canadian North? And this is a very broad question, of course, but I wonder if you could kind of give your own like succinct answer to this based on your own experience and thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, this is something that myself and John and Heather have kind of talked about kind of at great length as well,
Mm-hmm.
because as John mentioned, like there's I believe it's mentioned in the introduction to the series as well. There's really a paucity in terms of borderland studies.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that, I mean, I think there's a number of kind of aspects that make northern borderlands particularly interesting, and I think one is the fact that for kind of a much longer period of time than a lot of the southern borders that get a lot more attention. There was a much longer period in terms of which these borders were either not regulated or much more poorly regulated, and kind of a lot they were they're much more porous for a much longer time period, which I think allows for kind of allows for some really rich analysis in terms of kind of the cross border effects, like not just like between, for example, Alaska and the Yukon, but kind of across different kind of provincial and territorial borders in the north as well, right? I think there's a lot of potential for kind of the focus of internal boundaries in the Canadian North as well. And I also think, and this is touched on, I think, in a number of the posts that appeared in the NiCHE series as well. The North can kind of be a bit of a place of extremes, I believe. I believe Christopher Petrocas in his blog post really kind of talked about kind of this place as kind of a clashing of extremes, and that really, I think, shows kind of the richness of kind of analyzing some of these conceptual borderlands in the North as well. Yeah, so I guess that's my maybe not as concise answer in
That's
terms
pretty
of
concise.
why studying. Yeah. It's all
Um,
relative, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And in the series and in your conclusion, you kind of touch on a number of these key points that the post talked to, and one of them really stuck out to me, which is you mentioned that the series demonstrates the importance of widening our scholarly view of the North. So
Mm.
I thought we could finish up today by you kind of just like explaining what that means or what that means to you.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, I guess I mean it has this meaning to me, but I realize this. I mean, this can have a lot of different meanings to other people as well, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, take it and run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of widening the scholarly view of the North, as I think first of all, like we need to not really have a very rigid understanding of the North. I think we need to kind of have a very loose view of the North and not narrowly define it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this allows us to kind of more broadly conceive of the North and how it connects with other regions as well. So like looking at certainly kind of connections across North as well, but a lot of the kind of the North-South connections as well. And I think a lot of the posts in this blog series really showed kind of that importance in terms of viewing how the South is kind of implicated in the North, and the North is really kind of implicated in the South as well. And yeah, like I thought. Yeah, so I thought that was a kind of a really important element in terms of in terms of kind of widening our scholarly view of the North, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this, and I say like as someone who kind of like grew up north of 60, I think kind of this is really important for kind of Northerners to consider as well, right? Because there can be a kind of a tendency to be dismissive of kind of other areas as not necessarily being North, which I think can do a disservice towards Northern studies. I mean, I think, and like this is kind of another, I guess, kind of transboundary example, right? But I remember growing up when the Arctic Winter Games was being held in Fort McMurray and in Alberta, in northern Alberta, and a lot of Yukoners kind of scoffing, like, how could they have an Arctic Winter Games south of the 60th parallel? But I mean, the fact is, it has as much of a claim to being northern as Whitehorse does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, kind of having a fairly open view in terms of what exactly constitutes North. And I think to kind of carry that further as well, I think yeah, being kind of open to very different kind of conceptual understandings of kind of borderlands in the North as well. And once again, I think a lot of the blog posts really capture that. Certainly, Isabel Gapp's her blog post, I think, really kind of captures a lot of these kind of conceptual ideas in terms of colonial mapping, which I thought was really great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Micah Jorgensen's blog post, I think, really kind of I think does a great job in terms of conceptually expanding the North as well in a variety of ways, not just in terms of the smoke from northern forest fires affecting affecting cities on a global scale, but also kind of that conception, like I think in a really unique way, she kind of challenges that nature culture dichotomy, right, and showing that kind of how the smoke really smoke kind of like entering the body really kind of connected humans to climate change as well, right? I thought that was a really rich way. And so, yeah, I think, sorry, I'm kind of rambling on here, yeah, but yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways in terms of how we can broaden the broaden our scholarly view of the North. And I think, yeah, and I certainly, I'm sure there are many other scholars of the North and scholars of the South, for that matter, who could probably think of a lot of other really unique ways in terms of how we can broaden this as well. So yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, um, this is something I find really fascinating about border history and border studies is that the closer you look at borders, the less real they are, or the more fluid they are. It's like almost a deconstruction
Yeah,
rather than like
absolutely.
a strict study of them. It's almost a deconstruction of them. And I think that really comes out in this series and my
Hmm.
conversation with John as well, who is in the audience. Hello, John.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Um, yeah, so I just find that really fascinating
Yeah.
that that's the result. And I think that's very telling as well, right? Anyways, the Northern Borders and Boundaries series was fantastic. And you all are continuing this project, right? You got a project page
Yeah, we
and
have a project page. There's more in the works. So yeah, stay
awesome.
tuned. And yeah, like thanks to like John and Heather for like putting together this series. I think they did an excellent job in terms of kind of curating
Mhm.
the whole that whole blog series there. Yeah, it was fantastic, and I've got to say a lot of the blog posts really pushed borderland studies in ways that I didn't necessarily conceive of at the start. So it was really wonderful to read those, and yeah, and to try to like kind of come together bring it together in some kind of coherent way. But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, really amazing posts. So
cool.
yeah.
Well, I look forward to it. And I want to thank you for joining me today. It was so good to
Uh,
see you. I haven't seen you in
yeah,
so long.
yeah, it has been ages, hasn't it? But yeah, it's really great to see you as well, and to
Yeah.
chat. And yeah, thanks so much for for doing this, for putting on this kind of wonderful niche conversation series. It's
Thank
fantastic. Yeah,
you. Yay. Season one is
yeah.
over.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
anyways, thanks, Glenn. Take
Oh,
care.
thank you. You too. Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Yeah.